Welcome back, episode 8. Time is really flying. I want to say thank you to everyone who joined in today. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your likes. Thank you for your clicks. Uh, Today we have a good topic, so let's just jump right into it. And today's topic is something I've been dealing with. It actually jumped the line. I have about like maybe 20 good topics that I want to discuss with everyone. And this specific topic jumped the line because this is a lesson I personally had to learn. And today we're going to talk about forgiveness without an apology. Yes, forgiveness without an apology. Let me give you the backstory. As you know, first episode we were talking about boundaries. And in me setting up boundaries which are something I personally have had to do, I've personally had to set up boundaries for the people in my life, for the people around my life, work environments. I found that I wasn't sticking to, well, to be fair, I realized that I hadn't created any boundaries. I was just going with the flow of life. For the most part, I'm not one of those kind of people. I'm not atypical. I'm pretty laid back about things, so I don't typically do the demand thing. This is what I want. That's just not my style. I'm going to, because personally, I'm going to get my way regardless. However, I found that the older I became, there were just certain situations that I no longer could entertain. And there are certain situations, or I should say certain behaviors, people I personally didn't want to entertain. And what started the forgiveness conversation, because that's the topic of today, forgiveness without an apology, was as I started creating boundaries and I started putting those boundaries out. Hey, this is the new boundary. This is the new rule. I found that, like most people, folks, folks went ahead and they tested me. Last week's topic, we talked about being petty. In which case, I'm one of those people, if I tell you something, not to do something, and you do it intentionally, and again, it is intentional, because I've already told you not to do it, my pettiness comes out. Oh, I think you want war with me. Why else would you do something I've specifically told you I'm not comfortable with? You must be out your mind if you think I'm going to be in a room uncomfortable. That's just not my style. And so what I've learned to do is and being petty, I was using pettiness as a punishment. In reality, the older I became, the older I am now, I recognize that being petty isn't necessarily a punishment, but if people cannot respect your boundaries, which causes a conflict, you do have to give them the opportunity to correct themselves. So you know me, I'm always good for a good I'm always good for a good definition. So when you look up forgiveness, in the dictionary, it says the action or process of forgiving or being forgiven. I personally believe that if the conversation goes hand in hand, you've done something that bothered me, now I'm doing stuff that bothered you because I personally think you were trying to try me. That's pretty much how life was going for a period of time. Then I grew in skin in the sense of, let's say this is a repetitive action. I don't do the back and forth. I'm not a really big back and forth kind of person. That's not my style. So if I recognize you are incapable of following this specific direction, this specific boundary, I do believe in the cut ties approach. Maybe we're just not right for each other in this time and season. Maybe you need to go your way and I need to go mine. That's specifically how has, for me, that's how life has transitioned. And specifically if there is no apology. And so I have a rule for forgiveness, and that rule came by way of a minister that I was, a church I attended. I met a minister, and he had a rule that I have personally adapted. And that rule is, when it comes to forgiveness, I am not required to rush and forgive you. I am allowed to grieve and go through the process of forgiveness in my own space, in my own time. With that being said, you personally are not required or beholden to feel guilty based off my timeline. Right? So how does that look in real life? That looks like someone does something to me, it hurts my feelings. I am allowed to allow my feelings to play out. Play out. I'm personally allowed to go through that grieving process. And to be fair, when you are forgiving someone, you are going through a grieving process. And on the other side of that grieving process should be forgiveness. However, just because I'm going through my process, whether it be it takes me a day, it takes me a week, it takes me a year, however long it takes me to figure out that process of forgiveness for this specific action, you are not required, personally, you are not required to wait on me to move on. If you've gone through the channels, if you've gone through the look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, and you've done your part in indicating, hey, it wasn't done intentional, or it was done intentional, but I've changed, or I want to change my behavior. If that is the case, then you are allowed to move on. Just because I haven't forgiven you yet doesn't mean you are beholden, that you're supposed to walk around guilty until I forgive you. That's not the way life works. However, I have found that a lot of people don't like to apologize. Folks want to offend you and then brush over the offense. Like, oh, you mad? Okay, well, if you're mad, that's on you. No, it's not. It's not just on me. And what do I mean by that? Meaning the original rule is you aren't beholden to me, meaning you aren't required to wait on my timeline for me to forgive you. You can move on with your life. But please don't assume that because you've gotten over something, I am required to speed up the process of forgiving you. I'm allowed to be just as mad today as I am tomorrow until I've gotten through the process of forgiving you. You don't get to rush me, I forgive. You don't get to rush me and be like, oh, you have to forgive me now. That's not how that works. And I think, look at me being mature, y'all. If it wasn't caught on camera, we never would have knew. If it wasn't caught on camera, sincerely, who would have known? I don't need to be rushed. And so today's topic, we're going to talk about going through the actual act of forgiveness, what that looks like, and then what rules or boundaries come after. So again, this is a life lesson. This is how I handle forgiveness when someone hasn't apologized. You don't personally have to go through the same process as me. You don't personally have to go through and do it the same way I've done it. But if you're in a situation where you're like, ooh, I need to forgive. First off, let's have a real conversation. Why do you forgive somebody? Why should you forgive someone who hasn't apologized? When you are angry at somebody, it shifts your demeanor. It is very hard to be productive in any space when you have that uk on you. And I do call it uk. Don't know how to pronounce, don't know how to spell it, but uk is uk. It's just gooky stuff, right? It's hard to have a genuine smile. It's hard to have a genuine laugh when in the back of your mind you are plotting how to dismantle, handle, annihilate, break someone down because they've scorned you, harmed you, or any of the wiser. Anything above the rim. Forgiveness. I'm not saying forgiveness in the sense of condone what they've done to you. I'm saying getting yourself back to your square, where you can move on with life and that thing doesn't bother you. Because there are some things, if we're being honest, we camouflage it. I look real nice today, you see. Sure, they got a new hairstyle. But there are just some things that bother you. Like, it bothers you, it irritates you. And when you are irritated, it comes out in other avenues in your life. And why mess up your good season because somebody did something way, way, way back when, or yesterday, or 2 hours ago? Why mess that up for yourself? You understand what I'm saying? Like, you're good. You're amazing. You're perfectly fine. That's their loss that they tried you on that level. And so when you're really trying to get to it and you're really trying to grow into that person you've been called to be, or grow into that woman, man, you're really looking to be, you can't walk around with those chips on your shoulder. Like, some things you have to unbag. Like, some things you have to let go. You have to unbag. Like, it's not worth your mental health. It's not worth your physical health. It's just not worth it at the end of the day. And so it is important to forgive. It is 1,000% important to forgive, even if the person hasn't said, I'm sorry. Just because they can't acknowledge their wrong doesn't mean you get to walk around. Because let me tell you something, they are living their best life. They're doing shots, they're dancing on tables, they're going on trips, they're out. Sky's the limit. They are not worried about the fact that they have harmed you. They are not worried about your feelings. I can guarantee you that. And so if they're not worried about you, the best thing you can do, your best flex, is to make sure that you go into the situation and be like, oh no, I brushed that off of me. I figured out a way to get over it even though they did me wrong. That's your biggest flex. Why? Because when you see them in this lifetime, and you always run into people you're angry with, you do not want them to still hold that power over you, where they can shift your attitude. They can shift. You be having a good day, looking bad. Hair did, nails did, everything's done. Fresh cut, new jeans, you look superb. You run into somebody that you mad at, and they've just dismantled your good day because you still hold that hostility towards them. No, sweetie, you gotta brush that off your shoulder. You're not allowed to have that on you. And you shouldn't allow them to take that from you. Not at all. They can't take it from you. And the reason why they're not allowed to take it from you, because you're going to make sure that you get over it. So yes, you are required to forget. Here's green flag number 1. In your own way, in your own process. There are some things, I can be honest, don't bother me. Literally will not bother you won't bother me at all. Same situation can happen to a friend of mine, one of my sisters. World War III. Everybody has their own process, which is why you're allowed to process the way you want to process. Do not feel like you have to rush to forgive anyone. Don't ever feel as though because someone has don't ever feel as though because someone has done you wrong and they're ready to move on, now you have to get on their schedule. No. People who mess up don't get to dictate the process. Take your time with it. Truly go through your grieving process. And the reason I say this, a grieving process, if you don't know about the grieving process, if you don't know about the grieving process, there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are not, matter of fact, according to Very Well Mind, there are 5 steps in the grieving process. The first part of the process is denial. I cannot believe this happened. The second part of the process is anger. I know you did not try me. The third part of the process is bargaining. Oh my gosh, maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I mistook it the wrong way. Maybe it's not as bad as it seems. The fourth part of the process is depression. Why did this happen? How could this happen? You start to feel calm about the situation. In reality, in the actual presence of it, you start feeling like you don't have any options. And then the fifth part of the grieving process is acceptance. You have to go through all of those steps when you are truly. And to be fair, sometimes those things happen quickly. Sometimes you don't go through all of them. But the reality of it is, if you really want to get over something, if you really want to forgive somebody, you have to go through a grieving process. And what you're grieving is the death of the moment. In that moment, you are attacked. And when you are ever attacked, verbally, physically, whatever, there is a piece of you that chips away. Just a little piece. Somebody says something rude to you, just a little piece. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. No, it could be. Here's the thing. You get to set the standard on what bothers you and what doesn't bother you. And 9 times out of 10, the things that you set the tone on, what bothers you, is wrapped in the things that you find offensive. The reason why you find it offensive is because, part of the reason why you find it offensive is because it nicks at something on the inside of you. It tugs at something on the inside of you. And you have to grieve that piece of yourself that is under attack, that piece of yourself you felt like you lost. You do. You do. Now, let me give you an easy example. You lend somebody money. Let's say I lend you $20. I lend you $20. You tell me you're going to give me the money on Friday. Friday comes, I never get the money back. First thing, I'm being denial. I probably forgot to get the money. Tuesday roll around, I see you got a brand new pair of sneakers and a brand new coat, and you still ducking me for my $20. The piece of me that trusted you has been chipped away. And because the piece of me that trusted you has been chipped away, I have to grieve that piece of myself, right? Because in the forefront, I want to be like, you ain't mean to not give me my money on Friday. But once I recognize you still out here buying stuff, you have the money, you just not giving me my money, I'm angry. You see how I'm moving into this? I'm angry. And so getting into the process, okay, now I'm angry. I'm going from denial to angry. So now I'm like, well, when are you going to give me my money? I gave my money next Friday. Like, when are we going to do this? You understand what I'm saying? And then you get to the depressed part. The depressed part sounds a little something like, dang, I should have never trusted that person. They pulled someone on such and such. I should have known better. I'm wiser than this. I'm smarter than this, right? And the acceptance come with me recognizing that it had nothing to do with me and everything to do with the person who borrowed the money just being a slimy person, or the person who, borrowed the car and who borrowed your car and told us it just being a jerk. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you have to understand that it's not you. You have to understand that it's not you at the end of it. And a part of accepting it is learning how to separate other people's actions from yourself. You should never let someone do you so dirty or do you so wrong that you give up on people. Ever. You still need to remain and be the same person you are. And a part of forgiveness is letting and mourning that piece of yourself that you lose in the piece of yourself that you lose in having bad dealings with people you trust. Because let's be fair, the only people you really trust are people you know. When the last time you needed to forgive a complete stranger? Rarely, right? Rarely. Rarely are you ever in an altercation where you're like, oh, I have to forgive a complete stranger. Rarely. Most times it's people you know, people you hang out with, people you associate with that do something. And so we've gotten to a place where you're like, okay, do I have to forgive? Yes, you have to forgive. How do I forgive? You go through the grieving process of forgiving. Part 3 of, okay, I've gone through I've gone through the grieving process. I've gotten to acceptance. Now we get to go to one of my favorite subjects, boundaries. Just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean you give them the same access to you that they had before. You ain't no fool. Clearly they can't handle that access. That's how we got in this situation in the beginning. Am I lying? Exactly. You have to set up new boundaries. And you create those boundaries based off of what you're comfortable with. Don't you ever let somebody talk you into forgiving them and then talk you into giving them the same access they had before. No, that's not how we're doing it. Yes, you have to forgive them. No, you do not have to give them the same access. Let's be fair. You may not have to give them access at all. I am a firm believer this topic is about forgiveness with no apology. I am a firm believer that if somebody do you wrong, and you sincerely go through the process of forgiving them, after you've cleaned your heart and you've forgiven them, you are allowed to leave the relationship. I don't care what the relationship is. You do not go back. That's my personal opinion. You don't go back. And the reason you don't go back is because apologies aren't about making you feel better. Apologies are about acknowledging bad behavior. And then the next step after you acknowledge the bad behavior is changing the bad behavior. If that person is not at a place where they can acknowledge they are wrong, then 9 times out of 10, they're also not at a place where they're willing to change the behavior. So you forgiving them and going back and giving them the same access and giving them the same parameters only is going to set yourself up for failure, because you leave yourself just as vulnerable as you did the first time, and they've already proved based off their own personalized behavior that they can't handle that level of access. It would be like taking an alcoholic to a bar. You know somebody who's an alcoholic? They have a drinking problem. They say, hey, I'm an alcoholic, I'm trying to get sober. You say, okay. Instead of respecting the fact that they're an alcoholic, and taking them in environments where they can be, where they can conquer and be safe and be sober, right? They need to be sober. You want to take them to bars and parties where alcohol is there and expect them, the alcoholic, to not drink. That's not how you rolling in the beginning. That's just not how you do things. Once somebody shows you through their behavior, they can't handle that level of access of you, they can't handle that level of trust of you, it is your responsibility for your sake and theirs to back yourself up, and create new boundaries. And if they have not acknowledged their wrongness, if they cannot acknowledge where they've messed up, if they can't own that, it is your responsibility to yourself to walk away. Hey, look, I get it. Not everything is so big. Most people go, not everything is so big that you need to walk away. It depends on what type of time you have and whether or not you plan on doing life with this person. Each situation garners different responsibilities. I just know about me personally. It is a red flag to me to have a friend who can't accept their misbehavior. It is a red flag, like flashing red light. Red flag. If you're at that place, if they're at that place in life, or you're at that place in life where you can't say, you know what, I messed up, then that lets me know. I mean, sure, this current incident might be small, but what happens when it gets to a larger scale? What happens when, and let's be fair, we're all human. We will have disagreements. We will all have disagreements. Big, small, and different. We will have them. A part of conquering disagreements is us knowing how to show up, and us knowing how to handle those disagreements. So it's a two-parter, you know. If you feel like it's small, then create a boundary around it. Do not give them that full access to yourself. But as I said before, me personally, I am the type of person, if the person cannot acknowledge their behavior, if they're not at that place where they can own, this is wrong, I'll cut you off kind of person. And I'm not doing it with malice. I'm doing it with you're not at a place in your life where you can own when you were wrong. And I am in a place in my life where I don't want to be around people who haven't mastered how to accept their faults. If someone else come to me and they come to me and they say, hey, you know, that X, Y, and Z you did bothered me, bothered me. I feel like you've offended me. 8 times out of 10, not 9 times out of 10, but 8 times out of 10, I'll apologize. 8 times out of 10, I'll apologize because give or take what it was, I might have did it on purpose. I told you I'm petty. If I didn't do it on purpose, I will still acknowledge their feelings. Hey, I didn't mean for that to come across like this. I was meaning this. But I can see you're bothered by that, and I don't want you to be bothered by something I've done. I can own where I am in life. I want people around who can own where they are in life. You either didn't, let's cut the shade. We either do things on purpose, or we do things without thought. Either of those two things, when you're wrong, you still have to apologize. Now, I'm not talking about people who just come around just asking for apologies because you want to be offended by everything. Everything that you do offends them. that's a different cup of tea for a different day. That'll be a completely different topic. But if you truly know somebody has done you wrong, you truly know somebody has something has bothered you, scaled you, that's completely different. And because of that, I can be honest in telling you that if that's truly how you feel, I can be honest in telling you that, yeah, set up the new boundary, see if they follow along. But give or take what scale is on, I'm a first believer that you are supposed to let that relationship go. They're not ready. They're not ready to maintain it. They're not really ready to own it. They're not ready to come full cycle. And it takes two in relationships. It can't be you always being offended, you always being wrong, you always forgiving them, and then they get to run off scot-free into the sunset. No, it has to be them acknowledging where they were wrong, them making the proper amends that they have to make. And so another rule I have when it comes to forgiveness, and this is how I'm going to close everything out. I'm not sure where we are on time, and I want to make sure definitely that we have enough time. But if you forgive somebody, truly, truly forgive somebody, if you've decided to forgive someone, don't bring it up again. If you've decided to forgive someone and you are planning to still keep them in your life, this is a message from your big sis. I'm not a little sis, I'm a big sis. Don't bring it up again. The worst thing in the world you can do is dangle the forgiveness carrot in front of someone's face, and whenever they do something that irritates you, pull it back. Well, remember in 1942, you did that. Nah, that's not how we moving. You decided, after someone offends you, you've forgiven them, you have the right to either set new boundaries or leave them alone. And if you choose to keep fooling with them, if you choose to keep them in your life, you do not get to drag them for the offense. That's not forgiveness. You have to let that thing go. Don't nobody want to hear about it no more. Ever. Don't mention it. And that was my PSA announcement for today. Well, that is today's topic. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it as much as I like talking to you. In the comments, let me know of a time you had to forgive somebody, of a time you had to, if you're in the process of forgiving someone. I would love to hear how you feel about today's topic. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. It's always wonderful speaking with you. It's always wonderful, getting things off the chest. And so I just wanted to let you know that I'm here and I'm going through stuff too. 2024 is definitely the year of better versions of ourselves. We're going to keep on this campaign that we're just going to be immaculate people. I'm going to be immaculate. You're going to be immaculate. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much. Enjoy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, New Kush Productions. Have a wonderful, good day. Stay safe out there.